Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. Today is another very special episode because I have one of my favorite people ever, Sarah Young. She is the coolest and one of the smartest people that I know, so I'm very excited to talk to her today. So thank you for spending your late morning with me, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into all sorts of questions and conversations, Sarah and I have some pretty amazing conversations about all sorts of things. So I'm sure we will probably go off on some tangents and some different things today. But I want you to tell everybody about you and what you do.
Yeah, this is something I always struggle with trying to explain it in an elevator pitch. So maybe it's something we can work on. But I am I like to call myself an advisor on business and financial strategy for business owners. So I own Young and Co., which I've had for almost 7 years at this point. We do virtual CFO, accounting, and tax. And we also have the High Profit Society, which is my latest addition to everything that we do, where we go through business growth, profitability, money, and wealth building strategies, primarily focused on women service-based business owners.
Mm, yeah. And it's so cool because one of the things that I love about your model specifically is how much you lead with educating your clients and how much of it is not just money focused, but wealth focused. Because I think there's definitely a differentiation between the two, as we both know. So, for somebody listening, where do they need to be in their business to hire somebody like you?
Yeah, well, I think that for the High Profit Society, I would say, we don't focus on how do you start a business from scratch, but we have a lot of clients who are going from the solopreneur stage and they want to grow their business. Whether they want to have a team or not, they generally want to scale it up to multi 6 and 7 figures. And so I actually have people all the time, and I know I've said this to you, who say, like, well, I just feel like I'm not big enough to hire you. And that is, I think, just a huge misnomer in thinking that we need to focus solely on top line revenue growth before we think about how are we paying ourselves, how much are we saving and investing, and how are we doing things to build wealth. And we both talk about wealth not just in terms of money in the bank, but also in terms of like how you're living your life and whether you're able to like actually enjoy it and you have health and you have your family and all these things. And I think it's a not a misnomer, but it's just this misconception, I think, that people have that they need to be at a certain point before they start to think about those things. And my whole thing is, I think that we need to be thinking about how do we structure our businesses to be profitable and to give you more time freedom and financial freedom sooner rather than later.
Mm, yeah, I mean, so much of what you said is so important because I think, as we both know, because we do the same thing in different ways, which is really cool. Because what I love about Young and Co. and your approach is it is so holistic, right? So you are thinking about, again, the long term and wealth building and the quality of life. And why do you think that people are so focused on just top line revenue over profitability and quality of life?
Because you think that if the top line revenue gets to a certain point, then you will finally have all the money that you want. You'll be able to pay yourself what you want. You'll be able to do all the things in your life that you want without realizing that I think you get yourself on this hamster wheel and you don't have the underlying mindset to be able to actually like stop and enjoy life, whether you're at a certain revenue
Mm,
level or not, right? Like I know you see the same thing. We work with a lot of the same clients. And so I think
yeah.
that people assume it's like when I get to this revenue level, then I will be able to do all of these things, right? It's like when I lose 10 pounds, then I will be able to wear the bikini, right? It's that same thing. You can lose a 10 pounds and not be comfortable wearing a bikini still because you still have that underlying mindset of I'm not enough to be able to do the thing. I think it's the same thing with revenue. And it's a sexy metric. People love to flash it around. People talk about it all the time on social media, and so I think there's a lot more to a sustainable business than just revenue growth. And that's where the hard part is, I think.
Mm, yeah. And that's where I think you really open a lot of people's eyes to the important things. Because really, I think a big gap is just the lack of financial clarity and education. And it's so cool to me that you work so hard at closing that gap, and you and your team just are educating people and bringing people into the fold. Because I also think that there's, depending on who we are and how we were raised, like we bring our own shit into our businesses. And so on the financial end, there's like that mindset of like, oh, if I just make more money, everything will take care of itself. But really it's like learning to manage your money. Like you could have a
Mm-hmm.
smaller business that runs a really high profit and build great net worth, right? And so it's just being
Mm-hmm.
able to have somebody like you in their corner to educate them, to help them see things differently. So I think what you are doing is amazing, obviously, which is why I
Yeah.
send so many clients to you, because it's really, really impactful. So, what is your favorite thing about what you do?
I think my favorite thing about what I do is that I think about like my clients who go on to do big things. And a lot of times they come in and they'll say, I have this vision for what I want to do. I just don't really see how I can get there. I worry about the financial stuff. I worry about if I hire the team or if I expand into a new location, am I going to run my business into the ground? All these things. And then, we work through like the strategy. And I'd say, like you said a minute ago, like we kind of do the same things, but from different lenses. And I view my role as helping with the overall like strategy piece and the advisory of like how do we monitor what's going on, how do we make sure that you set the right goals, that you're on track to have the income that you want with the business model that gives you the lifestyle that you want, and how do we make those numbers work. I think it's like a big puzzle. And then I feel like you help more on the implementation side, because I don't view my role as implementing the structural changes. I just tell them what to do. I tell my clients, I'm like, if you do what I tell you to do, you'll be successful. But that's hard. And so I feel like that's where you come in too. And obviously, like you're good at the strategy stuff as well. Um, but helping people actually follow through. But my favorite thing is when I see the clients who have listened and have stuck with things over time, because nothing that we do is an overnight fix for anything. Like the stuff that we work on is like the long lasting, sustainable strategies. Like it can take 6 to 12 months to really see the fruits of all the labor that you've put in. So I think that's just my
Mm.
favorite thing is when somebody looks up one day and they're like, holy shit, like I've actually got money in the bank. We made money. I'm paying myself. I took 3 weeks off. Like, and they look up and they're like, wow, I didn't think that was ever going to be possible. I think that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it is. It is really, really cool. And you have experimented a lot with like your business model and taking time off and really like leading by example, which I, of course, appreciate, because I think there's a level of like fear that every business owner has. And a lot of that fear can show up in different ways, right? To whether that's avoidance or whether that's just like, focusing only on a certain thing, whether that's revenue or chasing new clients or whatever it is. And so I think that one of the coolest things about you is that you are very in integrity and very congruent. Like you walk the walk, and your work isn't just about the financial piece. It really is like you are providing a vessel and a plan to people to create and have a better quality of life and build real wealth. And the way that I see you and your elevator pitch, if you will, is that it is surrounding that, right? To where it really is like you are the person who helps people create real wealth. Because we've established that like money and wealth are different, and you can hire somebody that can say, here's your numbers and that's what they look like. Or you can hire somebody that's like what you said, to where it's like, what do you want to feel like? What do you want your life to look like? Like, do you want to travel? Like, what are those things? And then reverse engineering into, well, here's what your money needs to look like to do that. And I think it just provides so much hope for people while also having that guidance for you. So before we get into some questions about like our work together, I know that you offer a really cool financial health assessment for people's businesses. So I want to put that in the show notes for people because everybody should do it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really fun. I've done it for years where basically you give me your financial statements, you answer some questions about your money and your business and your goals, and I will sit down in 30 minutes and I can very quickly pinpoint like where are your roadblocks, where are the issues that you have, and what are the things that you need to do next in order to grow your business in a way that's profitable, in a way that feels a lot better, and the things you need to do in terms of money in order to be able to build wealth.
Mm. Yeah. So if you have a business and you're listening to this and you want to have a good quality of life alongside the money that you're building, make sure that you check out the link in the show notes to do her financial assessment because it will change your life. What is a fun fact that everybody should know about you that maybe they wouldn't expect?
That they wouldn't expect. I don't know. I think that I have two cats. I don't know if that makes me a crazy cat lady, but I still love dogs. I feel like people are always surprised by how like woo I am. Like, people don't expect me to be. Like, I remember when we were in Asheville last year and we were like in the car. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but you said something about like just off the wall. And I was like, oh, yeah, I feel like that too. And you were like, do you really? It's like, yeah. I feel like people, because I mean, I'm a CPA. I've started my career at Deloitte. I worked, up the corporate ladder and all that stuff. And I think people see CPA and they think like numbers, taxes, whatever. But I would say I'm pretty woo. That's a fun
Mm.
fact.
That is a fun fact. I also think that your personal story is incredibly impactful. So, Sarah also has a podcast that you guys need to check out, and she talks about her story. But essentially, she came from not even close to where she is now. So, everybody sees like where we are now, but like the cool thing about your story is that what you overcame in terms of your relationship, in terms of debt, in terms of everything that you had to really build from like your own rock bottom. And so I think just your story is so impactful. And I think that's why you work the way that you do, right? To where it's just like it's really hard to go through something like that that's so transformative, that's so impactful on like a soul level, and just to not pour that back out into the world because you know that you made it through that so that you could make a difference in people's lives. And I think you've done that really well.
Yeah. Well, I think just recognizing, like, going through all the stuff that I did, I think recognizing, like, you can't just focus on money without thinking about your business. You can't just focus on your business without also thinking about your mindset and your energy and vice versa. Like, it's really all connected. And I think that people do themselves a disservice by only thinking about, like, I just want to check the box over here and the rest of it's going to work itself out. But it's also interconnected. I just feel like I would never have gotten to where I'm at had I not done all of the work on financial stuff, on my own mindset to be able to get out of a mentally, emotionally abusive relationship and get to where I am now and all those things. Like, you have to have all of it, which is why I'm really big on being holistic when it comes to everything. I mean, health, business, all this stuff. I think it's important to think about all the different facets.
Yeah, it's easier to just focus on one facet and then wonder why you're in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our work together. And so, Sarah and I actually, the little backstory, Sarah and I were actually in the same mastermind together under another coach that was an experience that shall not be named, but was not a wonderful experience. And so we had talked previously on, I think Instagram is where we first connected, and we had talked back and forth, and then we're in that mastermind together. And then you came to one of my retreats. So tell me about, like, before we started working privately together, like, where were you, kind of what were you wanting, and bring our listeners into the fold there.
Yeah. Well, so as further fun facts for people listening. Kelsey is having me on here because I suck at filling out feedback forms. So this is my way of providing feedback, not feedback, but testimonials or whatever you want to call it. So I struggle sometimes to answer questions. So if I forget something, like, just chime in. When I think back to, I'm serious. Like, just, just remind me. I'll nod along. It's fine. Um, so I was thinking back to May 2023. That's when I went to the retreat. And then I think we started in like that July. Where was I in May 2023? I was coming off of another, like, how many tax seasons was that? 4 or 5 at that point. And I was doing a lot of work. I think it was in fall 2021 was when I first did the CFO offer that was higher ticket. And throughout 2021, 2022, I mean, we just grew crazy fast and in terms of revenue. And I had gotten the accounting team and the reporting team to where they were handling all the financial stuff for my clients and doing a really good job, but I hadn't fully fleshed out the tax team. And so I was deep in the work. I would say I was also um had been trying to work on health stuff. So health is something important to me, given, I have a family history with Alzheimer's, diabetes, all this stuff that I'm like genetically predisposed to, according to testing that I've done. And I was struggling to actually do any of it, to actually like stay consistent with exercise. I think I weighed like 10, 15 pounds more than I do now, and just like didn't feel good. Jackson was 3. And I was like, why can I just not get my shit together, basically? And, I had this like big vision, but I feel like you said at the retreat, you're like, I'm going to crack you like an egg. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then, you did. There was lots of crying just from like repressed emotions, I guess, and lots of fear around actually like doing the uncomfortable things that would take me to like the vision for my life I wanted to have. Like, I had this vision, but I was afraid of, and still am sometimes, like, of actually like stepping in and being that person with that level of like visibility and impact. So I think that um I don't know exactly I think what I really wanted, the word that comes to mind is expansiveness, because I think I had worked with, not just coaches, but even like contractors in my business helping me with like systems and all this stuff. And I felt like I was around people who had a much smaller view of what they wanted from their business and their life, which is not a bad thing, to be clear. I think everybody is totally fine to want whatever they want. But for me, I just wanted more and I wanted to be expanded. And I would say that's what I was looking for mostly. And actually, like, somebody who cared. I'd say previous, coaching programs and whatnot, it was either like you're one of a big number in a group. And so the coach may be amazing, but they don't have the capacity to get to know you, or you do pay a lot of money for somebody who presumably gets to know you, and then they really don't actually like care enough to like really understand you on a deep level. And so I think that was my prior experience coming in.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that like we've had those experiences, but I think too that like without having those experiences, both for you and I don't know that we would, it's such a good reminder, right? Like for me to just stay in integrity with like one of my biggest values being care. Like it's important
Mm-hmm.
for me to like know husbands' names and kids' names and like have deeper level conversations, because I think there's a level of like that's what I would want, right? Like I would want somebody, I think when you truly care as business owners, it seems like a lot of times nobody really cares about our businesses as much as we do. And so I've always wanted to just lead with that. And I remember our conversation at the retreat, sitting outside on the couch and just how much your like demeanor has changed, but just you sitting there and thinking about like, yeah, like kind of like tiptoeing around your vision. And I was just like, Sarah, like the thing about you is like you have no idea how powerful you are. and like you enter a room and like you're kind of quiet and then you open your mouth and people are just like want to listen to you all day. And I just remember us sitting there and just like that, like I just that instant connection of like there's something so big and so possible, but also recognizing that like you were your own biggest obstacle, right? And like your mind and your belief in yourself. So tell me a little bit about like so like you were in your business a lot, especially with taxes. You were experiencing kind of like the roadblock of knowing that you wanted something and like not feeling like you could expand into that. Was that affecting things outside, like your relationships or your communications or anything outside of the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all impacts everything is my overall motto. And so, um, yeah, I think that what it comes down to is, I mean, stuff that I've like continued to go to therapy for is just recognizing like a lot of that was stemming from my identity and my own sense of like self-worth and um like the level of like self-compassion that I have. And so having this like, you know, when I talk to people about mindset stuff, I'm like, honestly, there's what I find through my own personal experience is a lot of our fears and things come back to one deep underlying thing. And for me, it is this view of myself as like, I'm only valuable when I work hard and I'm the smart girl. Because when I grew up, I was nerdy. I had huge buck teeth and braces for 5 years, and my hair was like out to here. And I was not the like popular, pretty, athletic girl. I was like really awkward, and I still am awkward a little bit, but I own it more now. And the only
In the
thing that I
best of
really
ways.
remember, like, right, like I remember being praised heavily for being the smart girl and being the one who, was voted most likely to succeed and all this stuff. And so, you grow up that way, and like it trickles into business too, right? Because you're like, well, I just need to put everything I have into my business because this is where I'm going to be successful. And if I fail here, then no one's going to like me anymore. No one's going to love me. They're all going to think I suck, and I'm going to be publicly shamed, and like all of these spirals. And so, the way that manifests is not putting time into health, like I said, but still giving myself a hard time for like, I should be able to work out more. Why can't I? Not putting time into marriage, not just living a life outside of my business, because I didn't see the value in it. So it's just this huge ripple effect, right? And like these are things that like I talk about with clients, but I think that everybody needs somebody else to help them see their blind spots, right? So, like, logically, I know all the things that I need to do, but when it comes to me actually implementing those things, like, it can be really hard. And so, I think that's where it's helpful to have like a third party person who sees the potential and says, "Hey, like I see this for you. Like if you want it, it's there for you to grab it." And that I think helps to like pull me out of the busyness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so the logical side of us, which I'm actually glad you brought that up because I think like in everybody that I work with, I don't work with anybody that's not smart. I don't and maybe there's some stuff that they don't see in terms of like things like gaps that we're building in skill set or certain areas of the business, but I don't think it's like these gaps of not necessarily knowing what they need to do, but like you said, it's more just like having somebody to almost like sit with you in the discomfort of implementation because change is so uncomfortable, right? Like taking time
Mm-hmm.
away to, have a personal trainer, taking time away, like shortening your schedule, having those boundaries, like shutting things down, communicating with clients that like I don't work that time or, shifting your schedule around. That's like it's not about the thing and you not knowing that you need the thing. It's about having somebody that will actually help you to do the thing because when you do the thing, it changes everything.
Yeah. Well, you were on my podcast like a year ago, and I feel like we talked about like how important, like it's the small little things. Like you never think it's going to be, you know, it'll come down like you making the change you want in your life. Like the example I think to myself is what I used to do is like, oh, it's at the end of the day. I've committed I'm going to go work out before I pick up Jackson from school, right? And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I'll just check Slack one more time and then I'll respond to these 5 client emails. And then, oh, I see this thing is really important. And like it came down to that choice to click the button on my mouse to like open up my email again that kept me from doing the things that I want to do. And it's like that choice that you make over and over and over again. But it's so hard because in that moment, what you're not conscious of is I'm afraid to not check my email one more time because I'm afraid if I don't answer the client fast enough, they're going to get mad and leave. And then my brain spirals and like they're going to get pissed off and they're going to slander us all over the internet and my business is going to fail and everyone's going to hate me, right? Like this is how most of our brains work on some level,
Yeah.
even if you're not conscious of that whole process, right? So it really is like the accountability and somebody saying like here's how you make a different choice in this like seemingly inconsequential moment that actually over time like results in change.
Mm, so good. Because I think sometimes we think that like the changes that need to be made are so big. And so then we're like, oh, never mind. But I remember that exact conversation, like us talking about, because I'm like, what exactly is happening? Like, walk me through the details. Because those are like, that's where we find stuff, right? To where I'm like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you actually thinking? What are you actually doing? And I remember us talking about, you were like, well, I just like want to have my email in. And I'm like, wait, but and just talking through that to where it's like, that gets you and now your whole schedule is shifted entirely. But
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that conversation, and it's interesting how we think that the most impactful results are going to come from these giant changes, but really it's like those small changes that then are layered and roll into other areas that create the big change in what we're able to
Yeah.
do. So
Well, everybody always thinks there's like some big secret, right? To like growing your revenue, building wealth, etc. Like there's no secret. It's just like showing up and doing the thing over and over and over again. And that's the hard part.
yeah, it is the hard part because I think in entrepreneurship, there's such an emotional attachment, again, because it is us. We're putting our hearts, we're putting our stories, we're putting our expertise on the line. And essentially, especially in today's day and age, you're putting it out and you're like, you want people to like you, right? You want people to be like, yes, choose me, buy from me. And so it becomes this like things that shouldn't be personal, we end up taking personal. And I think there's a lot of that, in anybody, right? And myself and all of my clients, to where it's like, wait, what if we separate this emotional decision from this business decision? What if we can exit this spiral and go back into our logical brain about like what's the data that we have here, what are the facts, what do we actually know about the situation, and how do we move from there? But again, that's where like the practices come in. So what for you was like an aha moment or a win or a breakthrough that was really impactful for you?
This is one of those questions I have a hard time. When we were at the last retreat in Scottsdale, I was like, I need to let this percolate for a while. And I always have an answer. Um, I think it's to me like there's not necessarily like one big thing. I think it's just like I would say over the last 2 years, I have done a lot of experimentation. I have tried a lot of different things. Some of them have worked really well, some of them have failed spectacularly. And I think that it's taken me some time to process that, like, that is just part of being a business owner. And thinking back to, you know, 2 plus years ago, would I have had the courage to do the things that I then subsequently failed at? Probably not, right? But I
Mm,
also wouldn't have learned the lessons that I've learned. And I also wouldn't have the clarity that I feel like I have going into 2025 of saying, like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And just having the like conviction behind that, I think will help me a lot. And I think we all have to go through that trial and error phase at some point in our businesses. I wish everything worked out and everything, worked perfectly and we all succeeded and everything was sunshine and daisies all the time. But I think I think it's not like one sort of like breakthrough. I think it's just like over time, continuing to like expand the box that I put myself in. I think I used to say like I feel like I'm people put me in like a finance box and they only want to talk to me about like taxes and accounting stuff. And then I was like, I think it's
Mm.
actually me putting myself in that box. And like I think it's just like pushing the limits a little bit like every day.
Mm, yeah. And a lot of our conversations have been that to where I remember another conversation that we had when we were talking about sales. And I'm like, Sarah, like this is related and you have really great like thoughts and processes and tactical things that people can apply in their businesses that are directly related to like what you're teaching.
Yeah, like talking about sales in my content. I was like, well, I can't, for a long time, I told myself I can't talk about sales and marketing because I'm a CFO, I'm a CPA. We don't talk about these things. And then I realized, like, no, actually, it is important because it's a gap that I see people have. And how can we talk about like high ticket pricing if we don't also talk about marketing and sales to close high ticket clients? And so I think it's been fun just to go fun most of the time. Sometimes failing is not really fun, but I think it's been a good sort of journey and I like where I'm at now where we are able in the high profit society really to be able to provide like the overall, like I like the word advisor, like the advisory and strategy support of like for you specifically, like how can you use all the tools that we have in our toolbox to have an optimized business, optimized profitability, you're paying yourself, you're investing, you're living your life, you're doing all the things, you're reaching the vision that you have. I think it's been fun to sort of get here. And not that I've like made it and I'm at some end state because I know I'll keep evolving over time.
Yeah, but we're supposed to. And I think it's really admirable the way that you are honest about the importance of experimentation and failing because I think everybody again it's one of those things that people logically know but then people are so unwilling to like try something new or do something hard because it feels so scary because there's so much uncertainty but there's really not any certainty around anything. And I think the clarity like that you have now that's been developed over the last couple of months which has been again like such a combination of you realizing who you are and also like me witnessing your confidence levels continuing to rise to where it's like again I don't have to be in that box, like this is who I am, I've developed all of these skills, I've helped all of these people to succeed, look at like my client results speak for themselves, like all of that is there and it's just you allowing yourself to like see and feel that has been like
Yeah.
and letting that trickle in over time too.
Well, so one thing that just popped in my mind is I've had a lot of people over my years in business tell me that I'm like trying to do too much and tell me that like
Mm.
I need to like focus on, one promise, one core pain point, one transformation, etc., right? Because that's what everybody says to do. And I feel like you're probably the only person who has never not told me that. And I feel like a lot of my experimentation came from like trying to be like, okay, I'm going to like focus like this specific on this specific thing, but it's not in alignment with like what I'm supposed to do, right? Like I feel
Mm.
like what I'm supposed to do is like come up with things that nobody's ever come up with before. I'm talking like human design right now. I'm a manifester. And I feel like he sent me an Instagram reel like a few weeks ago and it was like talking about this exact thing, like I'm just creating stuff that like nobody's ever heard of before and they think you're insane, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh look, we've made this amazing wonderful thing.
Yeah, and the sad part is we never control the timeline, and that's hard. But you've overcome like so
Mm-hmm.
much like perfectionism in your willingness to experiment too, which I think is just like getting out there and doing the thing that's like most people don't. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people stuck. But so tell me, you've like spoken about some different areas, which I think is cool because you mentioned like your health, you've talked about like your marriage, even like Jackson a little bit. So talk to me about like the different areas and kind of the impact that you've seen in different areas, or changes or benefits that you have seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest shift that I had to make was not putting every scrap of my available energy into my business. So, health is one where I feel like I've made a lot of progress and continue to, and it's obviously something important to you as well. And not it's really been interesting. I literally just posted on Instagram today talking about like I started working out because I wanted to lose some weight, and I have this like family history of all this like really scary stuff, and I really just wanted to like try to get past that. But then in the last like 2 years of um I started with just like taking 10 minutes twice a week and walking and saying like it doesn't have to be perfect, but doing this is more than I'm doing now. And then eventually I increased it to 3 times a week, and then I increased from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. And then when that got easy, then I started going to a personal trainer, and I finally was like, you know what? Like, this is important. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to get support because I'm just not as capable of doing it on my own without the support. And now, I mean, 2 years in, I work out like very consistently. I eat well. I feel like health wise, I just feel a lot better.
Mm.
And I'm in a place where I'm like now taking it just beyond like doing the bare minimum of like workouts and saying like, okay, now I'm like changing my identity as somebody who was like really nerdy and awkward and not athletic at all, like picked last for every team in school, to like I can have this identity of like I'm a healthy person, I'm an athlete, right? Like that's a hard one for me to say out loud because I've never had that identity, but like I think that it is a really big like shift. And I think that's been a lot of like the internal work around like the self-worth of not just I'm worthy of like being successful in my business, but it's also, I'm worthy of like putting time and energy and money into taking care of myself. And then the same goes for, family. I would say, not that this doesn't happen now, but I feel like I used to have zero energy in the evenings. Like I would have and we talked about this like 6 months ago, right? Like I was finding myself all of a sudden creeping back up, being super high stress levels all day long, and then by the end of the day it felt like I had run a marathon or something, and I was just zapped, and I have no time or energy, no energy for my son. I have no energy for my husband. Like I just wanted to go into my bedroom and lay in my bed all night and like not talk to anybody. And that
Mm.
to me is not like in line with my vision of what I want my family to be. So, and I feel like we are doing more fun things together. We're traveling more. We're doing all that stuff just because it all comes back to like that underlying like fear and identity of like not just like Sarah is smart, Sarah's a high achiever, Sarah's going to do great things in her business, but also like I'm a great mom, I'm a great wife, I'm a healthy person, I have a strong body. All these things were like identities that I've like had to cultivate over the last few years.
Mm. Yeah, and that identity shifting is hard, like you said. It's very deep internal work, and it's so cool because I think I've just watched you go from like your business being your life to now using your business as your vessel to live, which is the goal. And now you're able to do all of these things. And it's so cool that like our conversations have, ranged from talking about health things to also talking about like, what does it look like, to create spaces in your home that allow you to like be in this new identity. And really just like there's a lot of people don't talk about these kinds of shifts that you make, and like when you're internally changing and when you can have this vision of like who you want to be and like what it looks like, and but you're still like far away from it in your own eyes, and kind of like almost the faking it till you make it and like becoming that when it still feels out of reach. And I think that's something that like in the beginning you were more like teeter tottering on, and you would kind of jump in and then jump back. But I think that like over the years, it's just been, like you said, you've been more accepting, more compassionate, more loving to yourself. And so really it's just, it's not that we like eliminated all of your problems. It's more so that you handle them differently. You show up differently.
Yeah.
You communicate differently during those periods. And just like from, obviously you've been to 3 retreats now over basically almost like 2 years apart, and the difference in you, like at the first retreat versus the last retreat, just in like your aura, your energy, like who you are, is so cool to see. So tell me a little bit about your retreat experiences. What did you enjoy? What have you taken away or learned from the retreat specifically?
Yeah. Well, I think about the first one, and I remember crying a lot, like a lot. I was like, where is all this coming from? Um, but I think that like after that, I took some like pretty quick action to things. Again, things some worked, some didn't, but I think it just like helped like open my eyes to things. I'm thinking about the last retreat, and I remember seeing like somebody else there, and I was like, she is going through the exact same thing that I went through 2 years ago. Like I see it. I see the, and you know who I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
and that, and it's not in a bad way. It was just like thinking back, it's like this is how I used to feel, and it felt
Mm-hmm.
terrible. It felt
Mm-hmm.
awful. Um, and so I don't know, it's just interesting. I feel like for me, what I appreciate, like at the last one, for example, just being able to talk to other of your clients. For me, it's been difficult outside of my own client base. It's hard to find rooms where there are women who, how do I say, like, I don't mean this in a negative way, but just like women who have built larger businesses, who have teams, who understand like the level that we're all playing at. Um, and it's just harder to find those, and I don't know why that is, but I think it's really valuable for me. Like again, I don't want to be like the biggest, I don't want to have the biggest business in the room, right? Like I want to have people there who also like will expand me further than I even want to. And so, I appreciate especially like that in person aspect, I think is really great. But I'm thinking about the last one, like just the ideas that I had of like, here's what I want to do, and here's what I want to have my clients do, and like just helping me brainstorm like people who aren't quote unquote money people, but have different zones of genius and different experiences, and getting like ideas for my business, I think was really helpful. Especially the last ones when it's been like more the ones like for your clients, just for me, because like they're people that I've now known for a while in a lot of cases, which has been one of my favorite things. That, and I think just like being able to go and do fun stuff without families around, but also around like people who understand what it's like to be away from, your husbands and kids, and leaving them with the spouse for multiple days at a time, and like not feeling guilty about it, I think is really great. Like the first retreat, I remember Jackson was sick and he had to stay home from school, and my husband was like, whoa, like what's happening? I was like, okay. I feel like everybody around me is like, yeah, no big deal, he'll figure it out, don't worry about it. And it just sort of helps me recognize like, oh, I can actually step away, and I can do things that are just for me, and it doesn't all have to be about work or about family. Like it could just be stuff for me.
Yeah, it really comes back to like your point of courage, which is like, I love that you brought that up, because there's things that I see and things that you feel, right? That I don't know that you feel. And so I think it's just like being able to cultivate courage requires you doing things when you're scared and doing them anyways, and then seeing, oh, I made it to the other side of that. So yeah, it's,
Mm-hmm.
so the retreats, I love like what we've built with, like now it's like almost like an annual, like some of the same people, so there's those like strong relationships and friendships that have been built. So that's one of my favorite things too. um, what is something that was unexpected from our work together that just anything that unexpected, that like going into it that you were like, I did not expect that to be a part of this, or to take away that or create that or whatever it was.
Um, Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is the way that I've been able to like get clients from it. And I don't like I didn't come in I didn't come in expecting that at all. Like I just came
Yeah.
in because I wanted to. But I feel like honestly, I feel like it's been fun for me specifically to have some of the same clients as you, and I feel like it helps my clients have better results when they have somebody who can like we almost always like say the same thing to
Yeah.
them. Like we give them the
So
same
they're getting it
advice.
from two places. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't talk beforehand. Like we just
Right.
it is the same thing, and I think that that's been one of my like my favorite things is because when I think about my clients who do the best, it's the ones who are able to go and like actually implement the strategies that we discuss, and it makes it a lot easier when they have somebody who can help them implement.
Mm.
And so I mean, I don't know if there's something else I'm not thinking about, but that's just what comes to my mind. Like I wasn't expecting that.
Hey, it works, right? Okay, so last question for you. Anybody that may be listening that is thinking about hiring me, what would you tell them?
I would say if you actually, I think if you want a thought partner, if you want the expansiveness, if you want to have somebody in your corner, I would say if you want like more sustainable change to be made, I think that Kelsey's a great person to hire. I would say that there's a lot out there. There's a lot of like the big promises of like overnight results and all this stuff online, and people saying like just put your head down, just work harder, like you'll get results if you just like do more. And I would say that as a mom especially, I think that a lot of that advice like really doesn't fly. And I know that like I've hired people who aren't women who aren't moms before, and that's fine, but I will never really take 100 like take the advice from somebody who isn't a mom, because I just feel like it's so different having, obviously my business is important to me, but like nothing is as important to me as my kid. And so like having this advice of just like skip the practice or do whatever and like focus on business first, like that advice just doesn't work, and I don't think it is sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to give anybody quick fixes. It's not what we're here for.
No, we're going to find it may take some time, right? Like I feel like we've gone through a
Mm.
lot of different iterations. It may take some time to find like the real root, but I think that that ultimately is what will give lasting success, is by like figuring out the what the problems are, fixing them at the root, even if it takes longer. um I think that that's really what gives you a business that is going to work the best.
Yeah, because I think if you're just in that constant chase for the next like short term fix, and we've both seen that a lot of people that make the big promises or the quick promises, if they do work, they work temporarily, and then you're kind of back in the
Mm-hmm.
same place. And so, yeah, I appreciate you, and I think the coolest thing about us is really like the friendship that we've cultivated, and like we are so similar in different ways, and just being able to have the relationship like that we have, and the way that you've trusted me, and we've talked about so many really like deep things, and just like shared our own experiences. So I'm appreciative for you and for our relationship, and all the conversations that we get to have. Is there anything else that you would like to say that you feel like people should know about me, about the way that I work, or anything that you think is important before we end today?
The one other thing I was thinking was that I think if any of your clients is in jail, like you're likely to like be in jail with them.
Facts.
and And if you're one of our shared clients, I'm probably not going to be in jail with you, but I'll come and like bail you out. Facts.
That is actual facts.
It
What
is.
she's trying to say is I am ride or die. I
Mm-hmm.
will take off my earrings and have somebody hold my hoops because if if I'm in your corner, I'm in your corner forever, and that's just the way that it is. So I would
Yeah.
prefer to not go back to jail, not my favorite place, but hey, you know, shit happens.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, lady. Well, I appreciate you. That's hilarious that you said that. I love it though. Yeah, you can't, it's just, that's who I
Well, to be
am.
clear, I want to clarify. I didn't mean it because you have been to jail. Like, that didn't even cross my mind. I was more so just thinking, like, if we're like on a retreat or whatever, if somebody comes in, if somebody does something ridiculous, like, you're going to be there, right there. And I'm going to be off to the side being like, that's questionable, but I'll
Bailing
come
all of
pick you
us
up
out.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to that. It goes back to just like what I would want, right? Because I think that goes back to just like what we felt like we were missing in our lives. And it's like for me, it is so important to just be a person that isn't going to run away when things are hard, and isn't going to abandon clients when problems feel big, who is going to make sure that just people are taken care of, and that at the end of the day that they feel loved and cared for, because I think that is just like something that's lacking in our industry as a whole, is just people who actually really care. So all
Agreed.
right, lady, well, thank you for your time today, and we will put all the stuff in the show notes about you, about the financial assessment. Everybody needs to go and do that, and I'll talk to you guys next week.